In today's episode, you'll learn how to make delicious kosher pan-seared cowboy steak using our Prairie Street Prime USDA Prime Cowboy Steak and these fresh ingredients.
Didn't disappoint, but with a cut of meat like this, how could it? Welcome to Prairie Street Prime's Culinary Kitchen. I'm Chef D. Arthur, and today we will be making Prairie Street Prime's pan-seared cowboy steak with Hasselback rosemary potatoes. I can't wait to jump into it, but first, a little bit about me. I'm Chef D. Arthur, a personal and private chef from Memphis, Tennessee, currently residing in Brooklyn, New York. I travel the world for my clients, NBA clients, entertainers, politicians, business people, doing personal chef work all around this country. So I'm so excited to be in this kitchen with you today, cooking up some amazing meat from my good friends over at Prairie Street Prime. All right, so we're gonna start off by jumping right into our steak. So we have here a Prairie Street Prime Kosher USDA Prime Cowboy Steak. Historically, chefs first seared the steak in the pan and then transferred it into the oven. Today, we're gonna use the reverse sear method. With the reverse sear method, we cook the steak in the oven until it reaches its ideal temperature, and then we pan sear it on the back end. So let's get this party started. The first thing we want to do is go ahead and get our oven preheated to 325 degrees. The next thing you want to do is season your meat up. And with a cut of meat like this, all you need is salt and pepper. The meat will do the rest for you, all right? So I'm going to season both sides liberally with salt and pepper. And with steak, I don't mind just kind of patting it in there just a little bit, all right? Flip it over. All right. And again, we're going to pat that in. Don't be afraid. You hear Mother Nature? She's excited. She wants some steak too. All right. And into the oven we go. My favorite way of cooking steak is medium rare, which is in between 125 and 130 degrees. So we're gonna keep an eye out for our steak to get to that temperature. The really cool part about reverse searing your steak is that it leaves so much time for you to focus on the other ingredients on the plate. And for us today, that's potatoes. We're making Hasselback potatoes to go with our dinner. Hasselback potatoes are the perfectly sliced potatoes, and they fold out. They're perfect, they're pretty. We're gonna add some rosemary to it, add some fat to it through some oil. It's gonna be perfect. Let's get started. All right, so I'm gonna take these potatoes and I'm just gonna give it mini slices all the way down, but not all the way down to the bottom, all right? So you really have to control your knife here. So I'm gonna go down to it's almost close to the bottom and then stop. Almost down to the bottom and then stop. Almost down to the bottom and then stop. Let's flip it this way. Almost down to the bottom and then stop. As you can see here, it'll fold out like that. Now, if you don't have chef knife skills like myself and you don't trust yourself to cut it like that, an easier way to do this is to take a wooden skewer or any type of meat skewer, stick it down the center of your potato, and then you take your knife and you cut down until you touch the skewer. All right, the next thing we're gonna do is take some fresh rosemary. I'm gonna take about 1 sprig of rosemary here, like that. Fold up all of that rosemary as much as I can. And I'm gonna start giving it a nice little chop because it's gonna go all over my potatoes, but I don't want big chunky pieces, I want small dices. If you don't feel comfortable chopping rosemary like this, you can buy dried rosemary, but I promise you the fresher, the better. And when you have a quality cut of meat like that, we have to go fresh all the way, right? We want these nice and small because we're gonna have them all over our potatoes in just a minute. So nice and small. Very good. All right, so I got my rosemary here. I have my Hasselback potatoes here ready to go. So what I'm gonna do is season them up now. So I have avocado oil, salt, pepper, and my fresh rosemary. So I'm gonna take about 2 tablespoons of the avocado oil. I'm gonna go liberally with the sea salt, pepper, and plenty of this fresh rosemary. Give it a nice little toss there to make sure it's all coated with this oil, with the salt, with the pepper, with the rosemary. Look at all of those beautiful colors there. Look at that, look at that. These are gonna be great And we want to make sure that that oil is getting down inside of those crispy potato bits in the oil. If you have like a brush that you use for grill or something like that at home, don't be afraid to brush this on there, all right? And we're gonna transfer this over to our baking sheet. Normally we would want to oil up our baking sheet before we use it, but there's so much oil on these potatoes, we're just gonna toss these around and we're gonna add this to our oven with our steak, which is looking amazing in there, by the way. Under normal circumstances, I would like to cook my Hasselback potatoes on at least 400 degrees so I could roast them off nice and properly. But because my oven needs to be at a cooler temperature for my steak, right now they're gonna go into that oven at the cooler temperature. But as soon as I take the steak out, I'm gonna increase that temperature so it can cook the final few minutes at a higher temperature and get nice and crispy. All right. So we took our steak out of the oven, we checked the temperature, perfect, 120 degrees, and it's been resting for the last 10 minutes. Now it's time for the second step in our reverse sear process, the sear. Let's get this party started, but I'm gonna sear and baste at the same time. And to do that, I need a little bit of garlic. So I'm gonna use a whole bulb of garlic here. I'm just gonna cut off the tip. We got all of this fresh, pretty garlic right up here at the top, all right? So I'm going to put about a tablespoon of avocado oil into a saute pan, and I'm instantly going to put my garlic face down because I want that to start getting nice and brown. This skillet has been warming up for some time now, so we're going to go ahead and put our steak in there. All right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cook this for about 30 seconds on one side, flip it over, baste it, 30 seconds on the other side, flip it over again, 30 more seconds, one last time, 30 more seconds, all right? After I flip it over the first time, I'm gonna add in some vegan non-dairy butter and some fresh rosemary to help me baste this steak. So there's my garlic, my vegan non-dairy butter, my fresh rosemary, and I've already cooked it for 30 seconds on one side. We're on our second side, but we're gonna baste this side while we cook. Make sure we get some of that garlic flavor in there. As you can see, we use vegan non-dairy butter, and the reason why we did that is because we're observing kosher cooking, and in kosher cooking, you don't mix meat with dairy. And so we have some non-dairy butter in here, but it's still doing the trick on this amazing cut of meat. I'm gonna flip that one last time, and our steak should be ready to go. So we just seared our steak a couple of times on both sides, and we basted it. I'm gonna take it off and let it rest for about another 10 minutes on this cutting board. And while I'm doing that, my potatoes should be ready to go, all right? So I'm gonna pop those out of the oven. Oh my gosh, nice and crispy like I needed them to be. Hasselback potatoes, these are perfect. All right, so our steak has been resting for 10 minutes and it's now time to cut that baby up and see what we're talking about. So the first thing I wanna do is cut it off of this bone and then I'm gonna get it sliced up. So my bone starts about here. I'm just gonna come around and cut my steak off of the bone. But we're gonna keep this nice pretty bone for decoration, all right? Next thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna cut my steak down. And next, I'm gonna add our potatoes. All right, so it's my favorite time of this. It's time to eat. Let's dig in and see what our food tastes like. I can't wait to taste the steak and potatoes here. Oh my God, these potatoes are so flavorful and tender. And I just know my steak is about to be too. Didn't disappoint, but with a cut of meat like this, how could it?
Coming up next on the Prairie Street Prime Culinary Kitchen channel, you'll learn how to make delicious kosher lamb shoulder sous vide.
It is unbelievably tender. I mean, it's seriously delicious.
If you want to experience what I'm experiencing right now, such amazing flavor, such amazing marble, such a high quality cut of meat, go over to prairiestreetprime.com right now. Please make sure to subscribe, like, and share. And if you'd like to stay abreast of our weekly content, please click the notification bell to become a part of our culinary community.